Have you ever wondered what happens when someone mistakes quiet strength for weakness? When a bully picks the wrong person to humiliate? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will shock you to your core. Before we begin, please hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Echoes of Stories. We love hearing from you, so drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from right now. The emergency room was loud that Tuesday afternoon. Babies were crying. Phones were ringing. Machines were beeping. Doctors and nurses rushed from one patient to another like dancers in a chaotic ballet. Nobody had time to stop. Nobody had time to breathe. But then, everything changed in one terrible second. The sound of the slap cut through the noise like lightning through a dark sky. Every single person in that emergency room froze. The crying stopped. The talking stopped. Even the beeping seemed quieter. A young nurse stumbled backward, her hand flying to her cheek. Her brown skin showed the red mark immediately, like a brand that burned with shame. The doctor who hit her stood tall, his chest puffed out like a rooster in a farmyard. His name was Dr. Marcus Reed, and everyone in Memorial Hospital knew him. Some people respected him because he was smart. But many people feared him because he was cruel. He looked down at the nurse with eyes that sparkled with meanness. "Maybe next time," Dr. Reed hissed through clenched teeth, "you'll learn how to speak to your superiors properly. Know your place, girl." The nurse he slapped was named Joy Williams. She was 28 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle smile that made patients feel safe. But right now, those kind eyes were looking straight at Dr. Reed with something that wasn't fear. It was something else. Something steady and calm, like a deep river that knows exactly where it's going. Around them, the emergency room felt like it was holding its breath. A paramedic stood frozen with one foot in the air, his mouth hanging open. A mother holding her sick child gasped so loud it echoed. An elderly patient in a wheelchair whispered to his wife, "Did that doctor just hit that poor girl?" Phones started coming out of pockets. Cameras lifted into the air. Everyone was recording. The red lights on the phones blinked like angry little eyes, watching, remembering, keeping the truth safe. Joy slowly straightened her posture. She stood up tall, her shoulders back. The handprint on her face was getting darker, turning from red to purple. But her voice, when she spoke, was as calm as a summer morning. "I'll remember this, doctor," she said quietly. Each word was clear and strong. "I promise you, you will remember it too." Dr. Reed laughed. It was an ugly laugh, full of mockery. Threats from a nurse? He looked around at the crowd that had gathered. "Did you all hear that? She's threatening me." He waved his hand like he was shooing away a fly. "Get back to work, all of you. I run this floor, not her. Not any of you. Me." But something was different. The power he usually felt, the control that made everyone jump when he snapped his fingers, it felt slippery now. Like trying to hold water in his hands. Joy didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't run away. She simply picked up her clipboard, turned around, and walked back to her station. Her steps were steady. Her head was high. And on her face, despite the pain, was the smallest hint of a smile. A smile that said, "You have no idea what's coming." Within 10 minutes, the video was on social media. Within an hour, it had been shared 5,000 times. Within 3 hours, it reached the hospital's private message boards where employees gossiped and complained. By the time the sun set that evening, the hashtag #JusticeForJoy was trending in 20 different states. People were angry. Really, really angry. Comments flooded in from everywhere. "Fire that doctor. How dare he? That poor nurse. This is why people don't trust hospitals." The hospital's phone lines jammed with calls. Reporters showed up at the front entrance. News vans with tall antennas parked along the street. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What would happen to Dr. Marcus Reed? But the strangest thing of all was Joy herself. She said nothing. Not one word to the press. Not one interview. Not one angry post on social media. She simply came to work the next day, right on time, wearing her clean scrubs and her name tag. She checked on her patients. She gave medications. She held the hand of a scared little boy getting stitches. She did her job like nothing had happened. When the hospital's human resources director called her into the office, everyone expected drama. They expected tears and demands and lawyers. But Joy sat down calmly, folded her hands in her lap, and listened. "Joy," the HR director said carefully, "we want to resolve this situation. We want to make things right. What would you like us to do?" Joy looked at the woman across the desk. She tilted her head slightly, and that mysterious smile appeared again. "No need," she said softly. "It will resolve itself." The HR director blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, what? You were assaulted. By a senior doctor. On camera. This is serious." "Oh, I know it's serious," Joy replied. "Very serious. But trust me, it will resolve itself. Very soon." She stood up, nodded politely, and walked out of the office, leaving the HR director staring after her with a face full of questions. Nobody understood what Joy meant. Not the other nurses who tried to comfort her. Not the patients who had seen what happened. Not even Dr. Reed, who was busy calling his lawyer and preparing his defense. He told himself that he would survive this. He always did. He was important. He was respected. He was untouchable. But 3 days later, everything changed. A black car pulled into the hospital's executive parking lot early in the morning. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky pink and orange. Out of the car stepped a tall man in an expensive suit. His name was David Williams, and he was the hospital director, the most powerful person in the entire building. He had been away at a medical conference in another country, but someone had called him home early. Someone had told him he needed to see something urgent. He walked through the hospital's front doors with 3 lawyers in suits behind him and a cybersecurity expert carrying a laptop. His face was serious. His jaw was tight. His eyes were the same kind eyes as Joy's, but right now, they burned with quiet anger. He didn't stop to say hello to anyone. He didn't smile at the receptionist. He walked straight to the executive boardroom on the top floor and slammed his briefcase on the table. "We have a problem," he announced to the empty room. "A very big problem." Within minutes, every senior doctor and administrator was called into that room, including Dr. Marcus Reed. And that's when the real story began. Dr. Reed walked into the boardroom with his usual confidence. His white coat was perfectly pressed. His hair was perfectly combed. He wore the same smug smile he always wore when he thought he was about to win an argument. He looked around the room at the serious faces and shrugged. "If this is about that nurse situation," he said casually, settling into a leather chair, "I've already spoken to my lawyer. She was insubordinate. I was correcting her behavior. Maybe I was a bit too harsh, but the girl needed to learn respect." The room stayed silent. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Director Williams stood at the head of the long table. His hands were pressed flat against the polished wood. He stared at Dr. Reed with eyes that could freeze fire. "Correcting her behavior," the director repeated slowly. Each word dripped with controlled fury. "Is that what you call it?" Dr. Reed shifted in his seat. Something about the director's tone made his confidence wobble just a little bit. "Look, I understand this looks bad on social media. The optics aren't great. But we can't let the internet mob dictate how we run a hospital. We can issue a statement, maybe I'll do some sensitivity training, and this will blow over in a week." Director Williams picked up a tablet from the table. He tapped the screen a few times, then slid it across the smooth surface toward Dr. Reed. It spun slightly before stopping right in front of him. "Tell me," the director said quietly, "do you recognize this person?" Dr. Reed looked down at the screen. His face went pale. All the color drained from his cheeks like water swirling down a drain. On the tablet was a hospital identification badge. The photo showed Joy Williams, the nurse he had slapped. But underneath her picture, where it should have said registered nurse, it said something completely different. It read, Deputy Director of Operations, Internal Oversight Division. Dr. Reed's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. No words came out. His hands started to shake. "That's impossible," he finally whispered. "She's a nurse. I've seen her working on the floor for months. She takes orders. She cleans bedpans. She's just a nurse." "She's my daughter," Director Williams said. His voice was cold and sharp like ice. "And for the past 6 months, she's been running an undercover investigation into workplace ethics at this hospital. Specifically, how senior staff treat support personnel, minorities, and anyone they consider beneath them." The room exploded with whispers. The other doctors and administrators looked at each other with wide eyes. Some of them went pale too. They were probably remembering their own behavior, wondering if Joy had witnessed them being cruel or unfair. Dr. Reed stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. "This is entrapment. This is a setup. You can't do this." "Sit down," Director Williams commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it had the power of thunder behind it. Dr. Reed sat down immediately, like a puppet whose strings had been pulled. "This is not entrapment," the director continued. "This is accountability. My daughter applied for this assignment herself. She went through the same nursing training as everyone else. She worked the same long shifts. She dealt with the same difficult patients. And she documented everything she saw." The cybersecurity expert opened his laptop and connected it to the large screen on the wall. Images began to appear. Emails. Text messages. Security camera footage. Complaint forms that had been ignored or thrown away. "For 6 months, Director Williams said, pacing slowly around the table, Joy observed patterns of behavior that violate every principle this hospital was built on. She witnessed doctors refusing to treat certain patients because of their race or economic status. She recorded nurses being mocked for their accents. She documented janitors and cleaning staff being treated like they were invisible or worthless." More images flashed on the screen. Dr. Reed's face appeared in several of them. In one video clip, he was shown turning away from a janitor who had collapsed in the hallway during his shift. His voice came through the speakers clearly. "Someone call a real patient. I don't have time for this." Gasps filled the room. One female doctor covered her mouth with her hand. An administrator shook his head in disgust. "And then," Director Williams said, stopping directly behind Dr. Reed's chair, "3 days ago, you did something that gave us all the evidence we needed. You assaulted my daughter in front of dozens of witnesses and cameras. You humiliated her. You struck her. And you did it because you believed she was powerless to stop you." Dr. Reed's voice came out small and broken. "I didn't know. How could I have known?" "That's exactly the point," Director Williams replied. "You should have treated her with respect because she's a human being. Because she's a professional. Because it's the right thing to do. Not because of who her father is or what her real position might be." The director returned to his place at the head of the table. He picked up a pen and a document that had been waiting there. "Dr. Marcus Reed," he said formally, "effective immediately, you are terminated from Memorial Hospital. Your medical license will be reported to the State Medical Board for review. Security will escort you from the building within the hour. You are not to contact any current employees or patients. Do you understand?" Dr. Reed tried to speak. His mouth moved, but only strange choking sounds came out. His entire world, everything he had built, everything he thought made him important, was crashing down around him like a building collapsing in an earthquake. "I asked if you understand," Director Williams repeated. "Yes," Dr. Reed finally whispered. "I understand." 2 security guards appeared at the door as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. They stood on either side of Dr. Reed's chair, ready to escort him out. But before they could move, the boardroom door opened one more time. And Joy Williams walked in. She no longer wore her nurse's scrubs. Instead, she wore a professional business suit, navy blue with a white blouse. Her hair was pulled back neatly. She carried a tablet and a folder thick with documents. She looked every bit the powerful executive she actually was. Dr. Reed stared at her like he was seeing a ghost. His face twisted with confusion, anger, and fear all mixed together. Joy walked calmly to the front of the room and stood beside her father. She didn't look at Dr. Reed yet. She was too busy setting up her presentation on the big screen. "Good morning, everyone," she said to the room. Her voice was professional and strong. "My name is Joy Williams, and I'm the Deputy Director of Operations for Internal Oversight. For those of you who don't know what that means, my job is to make sure this hospital treats everyone fairly and with respect. All patients, all staff, everyone." She pressed a button and the screen filled with numbers and charts. 6 months ago, I started noticing something disturbing in our complaint records. We were receiving dozens of reports from nurses, orderlies, cleaning staff, and cafeteria workers. Most of these employees were minorities. Most of them were women. And most of their complaints were being dismissed without any real investigation. She clicked to the next slide. It showed emails from middle management. Messages that said things like, "She's too sensitive," and "He needs to toughen up," and "This isn't worth our time." The complaints never reached my father's desk, Joy continued, because middle managers were filtering them out. They decided which voices mattered and which didn't. So I decided to go undercover, to see for myself what was really happening on our hospital floors. She clicked again. The screen showed Joy's face in her nurse uniform, smiling at the camera on her first day. I went through complete nursing training. I worked 12-hour shifts. I cleaned rooms. I held crying patients. I did everything a nurse does. And I watched. I listened. I documented. Another click brought up more videos. Clips of doctors making racist jokes in the break room. Footage of supervisors ignoring requests for help from certain employees. Screenshots of text message groups where staff members mocked patients who couldn't speak English well. The room grew quieter and quieter. Some people looked ashamed. Others looked shocked, as if they hadn't realized how bad things had become. Then Joy's eyes finally landed on Dr. Reed. He shrank in his chair like a balloon losing air. "Dr. Reed," she said, her voice still calm but now with an edge like a sharp blade, "you appear in my reports more than any other staff member. 47 separate incidents over 6 months. 47 times you treated people as if they were beneath you. As if their dignity didn't matter." She clicked to a new slide. It was a list of names. Long names, short names, names from different countries and cultures. "These are the people you hurt. Maria, who you refused to acknowledge when she tried to report a patient's changing symptoms. Kenneth, the janitor you mocked for not going to college. Aisha, whose accent you imitated in front of patients. And many, many more." Dr. Reed's face had gone from pale to red. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "I was under stress," he said desperately. "Long hours. Difficult cases. The pressure was enormous. It wasn't personal." Joy shook her head slowly. "Stress doesn't create cruelty, Dr. Reed. It reveals it. Pressure doesn't make someone treat others badly. It shows you who they really are when nobody important is watching." She closed her tablet and looked around the room at all the faces staring back at her. "What happened to me 3 days ago wasn't special. It was just the first time Dr. Reed's behavior was caught clearly on camera for the world to see. But that same disrespect, that same arrogance, has been happening every single day to people who don't have cameras watching them. People who don't have powerful fathers to protect them." The room was completely silent now. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Director Williams stepped forward again. "This ends today," he announced. "Not just Dr. Reed's employment, but the entire culture that allowed this to happen. Every complaint that was dismissed will be reopened. Every staff member who was mistreated will receive a formal apology and, where appropriate, compensation. And we will implement new systems to make sure this never happens again." Joy added, "Starting next week, we'll have mandatory ethics training for all staff. Anonymous reporting systems that come directly to my office. And regular undercover audits to ensure real change is happening." The security guards moved closer to Dr. Reed. It was time for him to leave. He stood up slowly, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As he walked past Joy toward the door, he stopped for just a moment. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, barely loud enough to hear. Joy looked at him steadily. "I'm not the only one you owe an apology to, Dr. Reed. And sorry doesn't fix what you broke. But maybe someday, you'll understand why what you did was so wrong." The guards led him out. The door closed behind him with a final, definite click. Dr. Marcus Reed's career at Memorial Hospital was over. The news spread through Memorial Hospital faster than wildfire. Within an hour, every single person in the building knew what had happened. Nurses whispered in the hallways. Doctors gathered in small groups, talking in low voices. Cleaning staff smiled for the first time in months. Even patients heard the story from their nurses and felt something shift in the air around them. Outside the hospital, reporters multiplied like rabbits. News vans lined up along the street, their tall antennas reaching toward the sky like metal trees. Cameras pointed at every entrance. Journalists practiced their opening lines, waiting for someone important to come out and make a statement. But Joy wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. That evening, she called an emergency meeting in the hospital's largest conference room. She invited every nurse, every orderly, every janitor, every cafeteria worker, every person who had ever felt small or invisible in this building. The room filled up quickly. People stood along the walls when all the chairs were taken. The air buzzed with nervous energy. Joy stood at the front, still wearing her business suit. The bruise on her face had faded to a yellowish purple, but it was still visible. She didn't try to hide it with makeup. She wore it like a badge of honor, a reminder of why they were all there. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice clear and strong. "I know many of you are scared right now. You're wondering if you'll be punished for complaining. You're worried about losing your jobs. You're afraid that speaking up will make things worse instead of better." Heads nodded throughout the room. One woman in the back wiped tears from her eyes. "I want you to know something very important," Joy continued. "What happened to Dr. Reed is not just about one bad doctor. It's about a system that protected him for too long. A system that valued his medical degree more than your humanity. A system that believed some people matter more than others. And that system ends today." Applause started slowly, then grew louder and louder until the whole room was clapping and cheering. Some people were crying. Others were hugging each other. Years of held-in pain and frustration came pouring out all at once. Joy held up her hand for quiet. "I won't lie to you. Change won't happen overnight. There are other doctors and administrators who treated you badly. We're investigating them too. Some will be disciplined. Some will be retrained. And some will be fired. But I promise you this, your voices will be heard. Your dignity will be respected. And anyone who works in this hospital will be held to the same standard, no matter what their title is." A young nursing assistant named Carlos raised his hand shyly. Joy nodded at him to speak. "What if we're still afraid?" he asked quietly. "What if we see something wrong but we're scared to report it?" Joy smiled gently. "That's why we're creating a new anonymous reporting system. You can report problems directly to my office without giving your name. And we're setting up a protection policy. Anyone who reports misconduct in good faith will be protected from retaliation. If someone tries to punish you for speaking up, they'll answer to me." Another hand went up. An older woman named Grace, who had worked in the cafeteria for 20 years. "Will the people who ignored our complaints be held responsible too?" "Yes," Joy answered firmly. "The middle managers who dismissed your reports without investigating them will face consequences. Some have already been suspended. We're reviewing every single case they mishandled." The questions kept coming. Joy answered each one patiently, honestly, without making promises she couldn't keep. When the meeting finally ended 2 hours later, people left the room standing a little taller, walking with a little more confidence, believing, maybe for the first time, that things really could change. The next morning, Director Williams called a press conference. The hospital lobby was transformed into a media circus. Cameras and microphones crowded together like a forest of metal and plastic. Reporters shouted questions all at once, their voices blending into a wall of noise. Joy walked to the podium with her father beside her. The room fell silent as soon as she raised her hand. "Good morning," she said, looking directly into the cameras. "My name is Joy Williams, and I'm here to talk about dignity." She paused, letting her words sink in. Healthcare is supposed to be built on compassion, on caring for people when they're at their most vulnerable. But compassion without equality is just a performance. It's a lie we tell ourselves to feel good while treating some people as if they matter less than others. The reporters stopped shouting. They listened, really listened, as Joy continued. "What happened to me last week happens every single day in hospitals, offices, schools, and businesses across this country. People are judged by their job titles instead of their character. They're dismissed because of their skin color, their accent, where they're from, or how much money they make. And we've all gotten so used to it that we barely notice anymore." She looked down at her notes, then back up at the cameras. "But I noticed. Because for 6 months, I experienced what it's like to be treated as invisible, to have my opinions dismissed, to be talked down to by people who thought their medical degrees made them better than me. And what I learned is this: cruelty doesn't need a reason. It just needs permission. It needs a system that looks the other way." Her voice grew stronger, more passionate. Memorial Hospital is taking away that permission. We're not just firing one doctor. We're changing everything. Every policy. Every procedure. Every assumption about who matters and who doesn't. Because everyone matters. The person who cleans the floors matters just as much as the person who performs surgery. The patient without insurance matters just as much as the one with the best coverage. The nursing assistant matters just as much as the chief of staff. She paused and looked around the room at all the faces watching her. "This is not just about our hospital. This is about all of us. Every workplace needs to ask itself, who do we protect? Who do we believe? Who do we value? And if the answer is only the people at the top, then we're doing it wrong." The room erupted in applause. Reporters who usually stayed neutral during press conferences found themselves clapping too. The video of Joy's speech went viral within hours. It was shared millions of times. News channels played it on repeat. People across the country started asking the same questions at their own jobs. Within a week, Joy had implemented every change she promised. Mandatory ethics training began for all staff. The anonymous reporting system went online, and within days, it received hundreds of reports. Some were about serious misconduct. Others were about smaller things, like rude comments or unfair treatment. But Joy's team investigated every single one. Other hospitals started calling. They wanted to know how Memorial Hospital had created such a comprehensive oversight system. Joy shared everything freely. She sent them her training materials, her reporting procedures, her investigation protocols. She wanted the change to spread as far and wide as possible. 3 months later, the state legislature invited Joy to speak about creating laws to protect healthcare workers from abuse and discrimination. She stood in the state capitol building, in a room full of lawmakers and cameras, and told her story again. But this time, she also told the stories of Maria and Kenneth and Aisha and Carlos and Grace and all the others who had suffered in silence for so long. The legislators listened. They asked questions. They took notes. And 6 months after that, they passed the Healthcare Dignity Act, a new law that required all hospitals in the state to have independent oversight systems, anonymous reporting procedures, and strict penalties for workplace abuse. Joy's face appeared on magazine covers. She was invited to speak at medical schools and nursing conferences. People called her a hero. But she always said the same thing: "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to accept that cruelty is normal." 1 year after the slap that changed everything, Joy sat in her office late at night, reviewing reports and planning new initiatives. There was a soft knock on her door. She looked up to see her father standing there with 2 cups of coffee. "Still working?" he asked with a smile, handing her one of the cups. "Always," she replied, taking a grateful sip. "We got 15 new complaints today. Good ones, I mean. People are actually using the system." David Williams sat down across from his daughter. His eyes were proud and a little sad at the same time. You know, when I asked you to lead the oversight division, I never imagined it would go this far. I thought we'd fix a few problems, maybe fire 1 or 2 bad employees, and things would get better. Joy smiled. But it went much deeper than we thought, didn't it? Yes, her father admitted. I was the director of this hospital for 10 years, and I had no idea how bad things really were. I didn't see it because I wasn't looking. Because I was part of the system that made it invisible. You're seeing it now, Joy said gently. That's what matters. We're fixing it now. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their coffee and watching the city lights twinkle through the window. Do you ever regret it? Her father asked. Putting yourself through all that? The disrespect, the long hours, the slap. Joy thought about the question carefully. She touched her cheek where the bruise had been. It was completely healed now, leaving no mark on the outside. But inside, the memory remained sharp and clear. No, she finally said. I don't regret it. Because now, when a young nurse walks into that emergency room, she'll be treated with respect. When a janitor collapses in the hallway, someone will help him immediately. When a patient speaks with an accent, they'll receive the same care as everyone else. That's worth everything. Her father nodded, his eyes glistening with tears he didn't try to hide. I'm proud of you, Joy. Your mother would be so proud too. Joy stood up and hugged her father tightly. We did this together, Dad. You and me and everyone who had the courage to speak up. That's how real change happens. Not with one hero, but with everyone deciding that enough is enough. And in that moment, in that quiet office in the middle of the night, they both knew that the slap that had seemed like an ending was actually a beginning. The beginning of something bigger, something better, something that would ripple outward and touch more lives than they could ever count. Because sometimes, the worst moments create the greatest opportunities. Sometimes, injustice sparks revolution. And sometimes, one brave person standing up creates space for thousands more to stand up too. Joy Williams had been slapped for being just a nurse. But she had risen as something much more powerful, a voice for the voiceless, a shield for the vulnerable, and proof that dignity and justice aren't gifts to be given by those in power. They're rights that belong to everyone, and they're worth fighting for.